to start? No, you don't.
Hi everyone, my name is Cristina Garzillo and I work for ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. Now the question is, should the places, the spaces, the buildings come from what the users want? Or should we create the spaces and put a label and say, go here to exchange please? Of course, the tendency is to suggest that we prefer the first answer, in which projects are actually processes of involvement and engagement, following the new European Bauhaus dimensions.
Hi, my name is Małgorzata Świkła and I work for ICLEI, Local Government for Sustainability. New European Bauhaus has great ambitions to build sustainable and beautiful future. These ambitions are complex and thus we have to work together. And together means innovative research approaches based on participation, tacit knowledge, arts, creativity, and biomimicry. This epistemological infrastructure could build a foundation of what we want to achieve together.
Hi guys, my name is Nicola Jacobi and I work for ICLEI Europe. What does circularity have to do with the new Bauhaus movement? There are a number of strategies out there trying to increase the lifetime of buildings, intensifying the use, promoting reuse, recycling and sharing. But there are also a number of challenges from the regulatory, technological side of how to use those materials. But also increasingly challenges related to mainstreaming those ideas. And I think the new Bauhaus movement has the unique opportunity to provide the missing link, mainstreaming circularity in different groups of society, and also forming new professional alliances among new stakeholder groups.
The new European Bauhaus is experimentation,
Teamwork,
transformation.
The idea of the traditional Bauhaus must be expanded today to include dimensions like sustainability and climate protection. In Potsdam, Germany, we are addressing this aspect in the new Bauhaus Earth. We demand a systemic view to identify and to re-evaluate failures of the past, but also considering their successes. This is just in order to dare an urban new start in the tradition of the historical Bauhaus idea. This nothing more implies than a reconfiguration and true evolution of human civilization and nature. New bio-based materials should be introduced instead of using energy and carbon-rich materials like concrete. And finally, we're also looking on visionary solutions for urban living. So we like to promote beauty. We like to promote circular economy and affordable housing, and all this together. This is indeed an epochal task because existing cities cannot simply transform on a short timescale. But let's discuss an example. Today, more than 10% of the emissions are caused by the building material, while 30% are caused by the operation of buildings. For both cases, we have technological solutions so that would allow us to achieve a better climate and sustainability balance. For example, we can use wood to substitute concrete and advanced technologies to build new infrastructure and retrofit existing buildings. We therefore need to rethink architecture and urban planning, among other things. But only with technology and new architecture is not enough, because cities are much more than just their buildings. They are centers of productivity, of urban life, as social exchange, consumption and information exchange. This is our vision at Bauhaus Earth. So we like to integrate scientific and social current ideas into a transdisciplinary working community in order to shape the modern future of ourselves. For this purpose, we are really happy to cooperate with other institutions that are also committed to the new Bauhaus, to the new European Bauhaus vision. Thank you.
Building on this work, it's become increasingly clear to us that the circular economy is absolutely vital to closing the current greenhouse gas emissions reduction gap, particularly in harder to abate industrial sectors. These have so far been less engaged in the circular economy agenda, yet heavy industry accounts for about 1/3 of global CO2 emissions. We're looking to, first of all, spark circular collaboration along and between key value chains with a focus on industries like steel and cement, chemicals, aluminium, and their respective demand sectors like mobility and the built environment. And secondly, we'll also identify and address the requirements to scale these partnerships and solutions, for example, through policy or investment innovations. The World Economic Forum looks forward to working with all of you and collaborating in our collective race to zero by drawing the circular economy and the climate action agendas together.
First, I would like to introduce myself briefly. I'm Sabine Baumgardt. I'm an urban and regional planner. I'm currently the president of the ARL, Academy for Territorial Development in the Leibniz Association. Complex social challenges require integrative and thus interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. The network-based activities of the Academy allows for close collaboration and a wide-ranging exchange of ideas and knowledge between members of the academic community and planning practitioners. In the face of many crises, all of which have different spatial impacts, efforts must intensify for the transformation of spatial structures, infrastructures, especially critical infrastructures, taking into account vulnerabilities, including those of population groups. The new European Bauhaus can be an essential forum for this purpose.
Thank you very much and welcome this afternoon to our NEB Festival side event, Research Meets NEB or NEB Meets Research. We are asking what new knowledge or what different type of knowledge and what research to create knowledge is needed responding to the new European Bauhaus values and principles. We have a lot of very important and interesting events during this day, and I am pleased to being able to facilitate this event this afternoon. I will guide you through the program with basically 2 panels looking at what maybe new knowledge with regard to the way of how we do construct hazard-free, sustainably, resource efficiently our built environment, and what is the connection of this to our communities, to society. In the second panel, we are bringing these together with various experts and will go through with them the questions that we are facing and potential ways of answering them. And I am very pleased that this discussion will be led by Dirk Messner and Bernd Bierwirth, President of the German Environment Agency and Head of Unit of Ecological and Social Transitions, and both will be introduced just in a second and will also be opening this part officially. Before doing that, I have to make you aware that this event is being recorded for distribution, also via YouTube, for example, and social media. All the speakers that agree to that, and also you in the audience, if you are active, for example, using your names via Slido, you might become part of that. So please be aware of that. Of course, you can participate in the anonymous mode by just not activating your camera or mic. This also means we will be using Slido as a tool to interact with you, and we invite you to be part of that. And as you see, we are also using Webex at the moment. You do have, and this is just a small reminder, you do have different functionalities in Webex to change also yourself the layout of what you see. You can arrange if you have a smaller or a bigger screen of the presentation mode or of the speaker. From time to time, we will offer you a view, but you are free to use the illustrations to arrange it in a more convenient way as you prefer it. Then coming back to the Slido part, we will use Slido, I think a tool that is quite known by many of you, to interact with you as audience participants throughout the event, and next to questions that will be collected and where you have the opportunity to upvote the questions. We invite you just at the beginning of this event now to go to Slido. So you can either go and open a browser to go to sli.do or to go to slido.com. You can also follow the link that is posted now into the chat. And there you will see a poll where we are asking you to join us and maybe help us understand where you're coming from, just a little bit before we go into our panel and plenary, to learn a bit about the background of the panelists and speakers, to help us learn a bit about your own background. So if you would go to the Slido message, then we can go there, and I will close my presentation here so that we can activate Slido. We'll be asking you these 4 questions named here. So where are you from? What kind of place is that? What is your job? And how are research and NEB goals linked? That will be the 4 questions to start with. And I'm stopping sharing my screen, and Emily is supporting us with the Slido. So here, if you are following the link on the screen, you should now under polls be able to see this question, and please enter just into the free box the name of the country in whatever way you prefer, and then the answers will come up. And the more, the bigger the country name will get. So let's see. We have a lot of side events going on today, and this has been, of course, now posted in particular in the German community. So at the moment we see Germany and Belgium participating. From our speakers, at least we know it's also broader across Europe that participants are joining. But we understand a dominance from the German participating community, from the about 50 plus participants at the moment. And maybe we go to the next question. And here we like to know, as we are talking about the new European Bauhaus development, about the built environment and the places where we live, where we are, where we act. We are interested from where are you joining? Are you in an urban, in a rural environment, or are you just traveling at the moment, or somewhere completely different? Let us know, and let's check out what and where you are. So most of us are already in an urban environment, which I think is quite interesting, and even some of them travelers. Thank you. And let's go to the third of the 4 questions. Here we ask you again to write something. Try to tell us, without using the title of the job, what you're doing day to day. How would you phrase that? And we see results coming in. So policy, research policy, advice, creative work, reading, writing, speaking, urban architecture, sustainable buildings. So we see a quite diverse list of responses. Environmental transformation, building practice. So that's interesting to see. Thanks a lot for participating in this one as well. It gives us a little bit better understanding also to the speakers on whom we are talking to. And to the final question, and with that also towards the topic of our event, what and how would you rate the link between research and the NEB goals? And we have 4 maybe prototypical answers, and maybe you can try to distinguish the one that is closest to your opinion and select it. So we see still some movement and not really a one-shot answer. There is quite a larger number saying research provides the knowledge needed to achieve the NEB goals, but also some that say that the goals should be the ones to steer the research. And those saying both is equally important. I think that will be maybe part of the discussion we will see now. And with that, first of all, thanks to those participating, having participated in the Slido for the start. During what comes up now, please go in Slido to the Q&A part, and there you can put questions, which will be later on upvoted, or which you can upvote yourself to share them. And here we will be continuing in our presentation and our establishment of the program. I have not introduced so far myself. Let me quickly do that here. I'm Jerome Bartes, working at the German Environment Agency. And I had the pleasure to prepare this event with colleagues. I will introduce later on in this presentation as well, but it's my pleasure that for the content now, we have 2 distinguished speakers, Dirk Messner and Bernd Bierwirth, and they are and will be referring to the question, what research is needed responding to the new European Bauhaus values and principles? What is the interconnection between those? And first of all, I am inviting Dirk Messner, who is president of the German Environment Agency and has been before that with the United Nations University, and before that for 1.5 decades with the Institute for International Development in Bonn as an acting director, so an established scientific researcher, transformation researcher, to give us his view and insights on the relation of research and the new European Bauhaus, and why it is of interest and importance to the German Environment Agency to be active here as well. Over to you, Dirk.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stefan. Hello, Mr. Bierwirth, good to see you, and hello to all colleagues and friends in the room. So to start with, my first remarks are focusing on 3 issues, which I would like to highlight briefly. And the first issue is the importance of cities and looking at cities and buildings in urban areas from an environmental and climate perspective, because our agency is about environment and sustainability and climate. And all in the room probably know that 40% of the emissions are directly related to buildings, and more than 70% of the emissions are related to city activities. So if we don't get the cities right, we don't get climate protection right. And the same is also true from a circularity perspective. And circularity is related, obviously, because it is being based on extraction to biodiversity. 50% of, in the German context and the European context, 50% of resource flows are directly related to urban areas. So again, we don't get green economy right if we don't get our cities right. And therefore, this is for me the starting point. This is a so important issue to talk about. And if we look back, we have been debating over the last 20 years much more about windmills and renewable energies and the energy transition than about buildings and the city transformation processes. So therefore, I'm very happy that we are moving now with a lot of force and energy into this field of discussion. And to finish this first reflection, we also need to have in mind, as Europeans, focusing on the European Bauhaus during this afternoon, that globally, urban population will double during the next 2 decades towards 2050. So this implies that each investment globally now into the new infrastructures of the future for the next 3 to 3.5 billion people need to be climate neutral and circularity oriented from the beginning. Therefore, for me, it's very important that we in our debates in the European context take this into consideration. Global cooperation is very important in this field, in the research realm and also in the realm of implementing real new infrastructures in the urban area. My second point is then that when we talk about the European Green Deal and when we discuss the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, there are 2 basic ideas, right? And the basic ideas are we have to invest in the stabilization of ecosystems and the Earth system. We have to accept the planetary boundaries. This is the ecological dimension. And then we have to improve, this is our second dimension of changes, we have to improve human well-being. So the co-benefits between these 2 are very important. And my argument in this regard would be that, I mean, if we talk about the CO2 price, if we talk about energy infrastructures, if we talk about hydrogen, all of this is very important, but for people, it's very difficult to understand how this is related to their daily living, their well-being. But in cities, in urban areas where we live, the social dimension and the environmental dimension and the urban dimension, the urban infrastructure dimension, and the cultural development of our cities, all of this is coming together. So cities, this is the field in which these 2 challenges of this century, on the one hand side, the stabilization of our ecosystems and the development and improvement of our well-being is really becoming very concrete for citizens. And therefore, the discussion about the European Bauhaus, climate protection, circularity, and the beauty of our cities is something which I find fascinating. And bringing the research around this kind of issues is also important because very often these kind of communities do not talk to each other. So this is my second element, the well-being of people and cities, making the European Green Deal as concrete as possible. This comes together in the European Green Bauhaus field. You cannot fall in love with the CO2 price, but you can fall in love with a city in an urban area where you are living. So my third element is then, Mr. Beaver, the European Green Deal. No, we are under time pressure. Yesterday in the Parliament, Fit for 55. Within a very brief moment in history, we are trying to transform our complete infrastructures, the cities included. So being under stress implies that we need to rethink our governance mechanisms. So how are we organizing the transformation? How are we organizing the change processes? And my understanding is, looking into the approaches of the European New Bauhaus, this is not only an offer to ask participants to attend in research processes or invest in certain infrastructures. My understanding of the European Bauhaus approach is that in this field, we are bringing researchers and planners and financing institutions and implementers together in networks to learn rapidly how to change structures and how to develop urban areas into sustainable urban areas. So it is not only an effort to reorganize policy research and policy-oriented research. The European Bauhaus approach, from my perspective, is itself a governance innovation. And I would like to understand the way we work together in the field to improve and implement and push forward the European Bauhaus. We needed governance innovations. And let us figure out how to build transformation alliances to rebuild our cities in the brief moment of time we have to get circularity and climate protection right. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dirk Messner, President, German Environment Agency, for sharing your view on the interconnectedness of research and the NEB, and we heard maybe less about the creation of additional knowledge, but rather on the question how to do the transformation, how to bring us into this transformative alliances and empower us to actually do what we know that we have to do it and bring us forward. It will be very interesting to see how the man responsible for our transformative research in Europe and for programming it will frame this from his perspective. It's a great pleasure to have the head of ecological and social transition in the European Commission, Director General for Research and Innovation, Bernd Bierwert, with us. He oversees the research that is going into the Green Deal and Fit for 55 agendas. He leads the coordination of the contribution to the new European Bauhaus as well, was part of the Bauhaus Nexus report, which some of you might know. He's legal or has a legal background, also from University of Freiburg in Germany, and has served previously to the cabinet of the Vice President Maroš Šefčovič in the Energy Union. Bernd, it's a pleasure to have you with us today, and we are looking forward to your introductory statement on what the new European Bauhaus is to provide from the European Commission's point of view.
Vielen Dank, lieber Herr Messner, lieber Herr Bartke, dear colleagues, friends of the Bauhaus. Let me first express a big thanks to the Umweltbundesamt, to Dirk Messner, Stefan Bartke and his team for this great initiative and for an excellent organization, which is part of the European Bauhaus Festival, which has been launched at lunchtime by Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President. I think there's no better institution and no better place to launch this initiative than from the Umweltbundesamt in Dessau. Since you were the headquarter, if I can say so, since 25 of the Bauhaus, and then great to see now the revival and to put it in the context of the European Green Deal, to which Mr. Messner was already referring to. Some of you might have already listened to the speech of Ursula von der Leyen when she opened the festival today at 1 o'clock. She did it from not from Dessau, not from Weimar, not from Berlin, not from Brussels. She did it from Rome. Actually, she's currently visiting Italy, paying a 2 days visit, where she spoke already at the Academy of Science of the Vatican after a bilateral meeting with the Pope. And interesting to note that the Academy of Science there put Bauhaus also in its center. So there are a lot of interesting conferences going on today over the next days. I would like to. I had prepared a PowerPoint presentation, but I will not use it here on the screen, but just quickly go through a couple of ideas from the European perspective to make the link to the European Green Deal. Mr. Messner already described it very well, the overall ambition of decarbonization 2050. We had hoped yesterday indeed to have an agreement in the Parliament on ETS. This has been a little postponed, at least on CO2 cars emission. There was a progress, and the idea behind this new initiative is exactly when you look at the many regulatory frameworks, initiatives, it's not very easy to communicate, to make it understandable, to turn it into a positive experience in which all Europeans can participate. So to make the Green Deal more tangible to our citizens and inspiring a movement that would build along the three inseparable values, which are sustainability, inclusion, and aesthetics. I had to use a background picture because the Commission offices tend to be neither sustainable. Maybe they are inclusive, but definitely they are not very beautiful. Built with a lot of cement. No wood, unfortunately, not yet. So that's why I used a greener background. We wanted to build this initiative with a number of thematic axes. So notably to stress that for the transformation path, we have to reconnect to nature, regain a sense of belonging, and then prioritize the places and the people that need it most, so that these things are not all steered, controlled, debated only in the capitals, but there where it's really needed. We wanted to have a key interconnected transformations, looking at perspectives and ways of thinking. So education and culture is important. Of course, also the research and technological aspects, the enabling ecosystem for innovation and the places on the ground. What is very important to build an enthusiastic Bauhaus community, for instance, with our lab. The festival is one contribution to this. I liked your clip very much, Stefan, which you showed at the beginning, and it shows the enthusiasm of all actors involved in this initiative. We have been working with experts on the question how RNI can contribute to the initiative. Professor Schellenhuber, whom everyone knows, certainly has been a leading expert in this process. I think he's also with the president in Rome, as he has been contributing also with the Vatican to contribute to the Green Deal the discussion. I can warmly recommend you to read the report, and which looks on ways and means how European instrument can be used, including our funding instruments from the research community to contribute to this initiative. From our perspective, just a couple of actually days after Ursula von der Leyen announced this initiative, we had a look how we can integrate already in our existing in the work programs we have been developing for 21-22. We have been targeting a number of, we call it clusters in our Horizon Europe program, to address important issues which are related to cultural and creative industries, affordable housing, and the built and environment. We have launched also in 2021 so-called Bauhaus Lighthouse Demonstrator projects. There are 5 have been selected. I'm very happy that you managed to have Elizabeth Merck on the panel. She has been leading one of the 5 projects which have been selected, and I'm sure she will come back to this later. Currently, and my team Emily is with us. She is mainly in charge of looking how we can mainstream the Bauhaus ideas into our research programs. We are currently programming 23-24. We look at areas such as arts and culture, social and affordable housing, urban manufacturing, wood and construction, urban food systems, and nature-based solutions. So a whole array, which is not exclusive, not exhaustive, but definitely touching on some of the key pillars of this initiative. And we are quite confident to hopefully to attract many good projects, as was the case already for the Lighthouse demonstrators. So this is a bit in a nutshell what we are trying to do with our instruments. We certainly see research and innovation as key to contribute to this initiative, but which goes, of course, much beyond, including urban planning, education, culture, etc. And I'll be very interested and curious to listen, of course, to the panel members in the two sessions, as they will be focusing on two very important aspects. That's all from my side for the introduction from my not so really Bauhaus office. It's not green, it's rather gray. And Stefan, back to you. You look much greener with your background. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bernd. Yeah, actually, for those who not recognize it, it's the entry to our main office in Dessau of the German Environment Agency, of which Dirk has more the window and sky view of this very nice building. So thank you for your insights and your incredible work here. I think those who have been dealing with European research have for sure seen the shift from, let's say, workplaces and industry-oriented research focused in the last decades, now going to the Green Deal focused research, which is really a remarkable shift from my own perspective. But let's see where, and with that, go to our first panel now. Let's see which questions we have actually to tackle and for which we might need new knowledge and research or additional ones. And if we want to build this more sustainable future and cities. And I'm very glad that we have three now additional speakers here on our first panel to join. This is Johanni Pirin. He is head of Carbon Neutral Construction and Development Center at the city of Lahti. And I'm quickly introducing all three of them. In the beginning, Johanni has a 30-year experience in his profession, and he started as a foreman and a builder, so from the very practical side into the more methodological side, and he has done so now to heading this Carbon Neutral Construction Development Center in Lahti. And Lahti, as most of you will know, is the 2021 Green Capital of Europe, so a city that ambitions to be carbon neutral by 2025. I repeat, 2025. This is in 2.5 years already. Let's learn from Johanni in a couple of minutes how this will be achieved, hopefully. After Johanni, we will have an input by Heidrun Famler. She is acts as president of the Baltic Environmental Forum and is chairperson for the German part. This NGO sees itself as a think tank for cross-sectoral environmental and sustainability issues and as a motor for international and regional and local cooperation. And one of her foci is the question of a tox-free environment, of chemical risk management. And here she says it is important that we communicate and that the communication task is really important. And she will report of one of the big projects they are doing in this regard. The third speaker will be Jerome Bartes, who is with the European Standardization Committee, technical committee focusing on construction products and the assessment and release of dangerous substances. Jerome studied chemistry and sociology in the Netherlands and in the US. So he knows, I think, a lot about what risks are and how they are perceived and the way between that. So linking here again, what we want to link, which is our built environment with the resources and how the people understand it, and actually what the concerns we need to place there are, and the question, how can policy, how can standards help us to channel ourselves through. So I'm looking forward to, first of all, having these three inputs from the three speakers, and then we will move on to a first reflection with the chairpersons, and also then including your questions from the audience. So go to the Slido part and use the Q&A part to also drop your questions to the speakers. First of all, Johanni, I'm inviting you to the floor, and as agreed, we will have first a video to present your work, and then you will be adding, as I remember, to what we see for the introduction. So maybe we first go with the video, and then Johanni will.
The city of Lahti in Finland is the European Green Capital 2021 and the frontrunner in environmental work. The restoration of the Lake Vesijärvi acted as a stimulus for environmental expertise in Lahti already in the 1970s. Lahti is a pioneer in circular economy. In our city, we realized that waste is raw material. At the moment, 99% of our household waste is recycled in Lahti. We aim to be a zero-waste city by 2050. Lahti has abandoned coal, and we are no longer using fossil fuels to heat our houses and buildings. Today, the energy in the city is produced from biofuels and recycled fuels. Lahti is also a pioneer in carbon-neutral buildings and construction. This is important, as globally the construction sector produces 39% of the carbon dioxide emissions. We have established a carbon-neutral construction centre that brings together the key players in the field, including companies, universities, investors and the public sector. There are many good practices already in use. For example, the schools in Lahti are very energy efficient. The Carbon Neutral Construction Centre has several new projects under planning. One focus is on developing demolished concrete waste into new products for the construction industry, and in this way creating new business opportunities. We have also started an ecosystem that aims to increase the number of carbon-neutral buildings by boosting the usage of timber and renewable energy solutions. The Development Centre has already many public, private and research partners, and it strongly contributes to the city's target to become carbon neutral by 2025, well ahead the national and European targets.
Wir werden alle reich geboren mit einem vollen Kopf.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, and welcome, Johanni, and tell us a bit more on what you are doing, particularly at the moment, and how Lahti is going towards this really tremendous goal of achieving carbon neutrality also in the built environment by 2025.
Thank you. Well, my job is to take care of the buildings, so I'm not the right person to tell you about this whole our goal to be carbon neutral as a city. But of course, we have already given up all fossil energy here in our heating system, so it was a big jump in this area. Now, what we are working on, because of our cold climate, the energy consumption of the houses is the first task that we have to do. So we are focusing on the houses that can with renewable energy. So the houses must be zero energy houses or plus energy houses. So we are working on that. The main task is or the main idea is to use sun panels and run the heat pumps and with the sun panels energy. And so the problem is the January, February, March, and January and February and December, when we have no sunlight here. So we are focusing on where to gather the energy when the sun is not shining, and how to do that. So we are studying the battery technology and the hydrogen technology, and there payback times in our region projects. We have as much the sun energy as you have in the middle of Europe, but it's in the summertime, so we have to somehow to tackle this problem. The other problem is the waste. Our houses, which were made in 1970s and 60s, 70s and 80s, were very badly built, and we have to tear down a lot of those houses. So we have a lot of construction waste, and which we want to reuse in buildings, like concrete, for example. So we are studying how we can use the crushed concrete or the demolished concrete again, and for example for the yard tiles or things like that that we can use to build our infrastructures. But here in Finland, the carbon neutrality of building is 65% dependent on the energy use. So that's our main focus anyway. We have been saving energy here since 1972, so we know how to do it. But the next problem is how to have the renewable energy implemented into the houses. That's well, one problem is with our builders who own the houses. They demand that the payback time of these investments, for example, for sun power, must be under 8 years, but usually it is about 12 or 13 years here. So we have to be more efficient when we build these houses, and the payback time, it comes always in the discussions with the builders. They don't understand, they don't mind about the climate change, they don't mind about the dioxide, they mind just the money. So we have to be so creative that we can produce that kind of solutions that are very cheap for the builders. So that's one problem that we have to tackle already. Well, so we work, and of course in Finland we have a lot of wood, and that's why we are focusing on the food constructions and building wooden houses, and because the carbon footprint of the wooden houses is much lower than with the concrete ones. So we are developing the wood house technology. Well,
thank you very much, Johanni, for this interesting insights. Of course, making us aware if a region, even without sunlight, is able to use renewables and to find solutions, it should be very well possible for other places to follow your experiences. And nevertheless facing the necessary incentives to be challenged, to be maybe addressed also with new social research. Do we need additional activities there to support you precisely in your place and more generally with the governance solutions that also Dirk has been mentioned before? I think questions that will be picked up again, but let us move on to Heidrun Famler. Next, and Heidrun, I would like to call you to the stage for your insights on resource efficient and tax-free construction. Heidrun, the place is yours, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Stefan, and to the whole team of the UBA for the invitation. I fully agree with the opening ideas from Dirk Messner, but I think you only want to stand on two legs, and I would like to propose a third leg. And the third leg, besides climate neutral and circularity oriented cities, for me is that they are tox free as well. For sure, we can and must reach the circularity and the climate neutrality, but we can only achieve that if we get rid of the harmful substances in all kinds of materials, in chemicals products, in articles of a solid form, in products, in processes, in services, in our urban life, from everyday consumption, from industry, and from construction material. You said so nice that cities are so important, and this is connecting to my non-HAS City consortium that has been founded actually by Stockholm City, which has a big heart for chemicals. They started the Chemical Action Plan, and the director of the environmental department, when we started our non-HAS City initiative, I think 8 years ago, in the opening of the project, he said, cities can do more than nations. They can really do the practical management with the construction material, with the housing, the buildings, as well as with other kind of managing environment in the urban premises. And I would like to bring the hazardous substance in construction and buildings a little bit into the game here, because so far you all talked about circularity and about CO2 emission reduction, about climate neutrality. Construction material and construction activities and buildings have a lot to do with hazardous substances. Construction material as such contains a vast variety of substances itself. A lot of them will be emitted, causing human and environmental exposure. And we also have painful learnings from the past. You remember the asbestos issues and the PCB issues, which of course we want to avoid in future. And the non-HAS City Consortium, we are a flagship project of the Baltic Sea region, tackling one project after the other, different issues of hazardous substances management in the urban environment, in the urban activities. And we have put as a goal for the coming years, construction material. We want to make construction material and building management climate neutral, circular, and tox-free, with a big end. And that's our goal for the future. And we are distinguishing with regard to the hazardous substances 4 pathways into the environment or to the exposure. From construction material, outdoor, we are talking about facades, roofs, roads, installations, entering municipal stormwater systems directly. But we are also talking and looking at indoor materials entering the sewage system, for example, via wastewater, floor swapping, and so on. And a lot of substances emitting actually from indoor installations in that way. We are talking about the indoor air with regard to the exposure of humans. And we are talking not only about buildings as such, but also about construction sites and the emissions from them. So directly to the groundwater, partly to the stormwater. And we see a group of substances that we should pay attention to in the construction sector. These are the plasticizers, including phthalates, that are the biocides, a broad spectrum of preservatives, especially also with regard to new energy efficient buildings. The wood material, the great wood material being so much available in Finland, for example, that's a matter also of the treatment. We are talking about chlorinated paraffins, brominated flame retardants, organophosphates, perfluorinated substances, metals, surface treatment chemicals, oils, PAHs, and 2-component plastics. I think those of you dealing with construction, you know that. And I would like to put a task for you as the researchers, but also for the authorities. We have made an assessment of what are actually the challenges before we made a new project application, and I would like to share with you our 6 points of challenges. And the one which I think is a big research task is the lack of proper assessment of the impacts. So the materials that are emitting hazardous substances must be tracked better, especially flame retardants must be checked. Is this an issue during the use of a house, or is it only an issue for recycling? Is it an issue for human exposure? We understood we do not know enough on that. Then we have to talk about the circularity aspect and the hazardous substance management with regard to both old buildings in terms of demolishing them, how to increase the usage of old building material. It was very interesting what Juhani said from Lahti. I think this would be very interesting to share the experiences on that, and at the same time avoid the circulation of contaminated materials. And then we talk about new buildings. The material should be tox-free and prepared already for circularity, but the traceable information is lacking, particularly on solid articles, and the supply chain communication is too weak. That is the eternal music what we play since 20 years, but it's still not functioning properly to get the information on toxicity through the supply chain. Definitely the authorities need to look at the monitoring. There is a lack of monitoring, renovation, extending of old buildings. That's a huge issue in cities, and the material is used in large quantities and it's not very well monitored, especially a problem in public housing. There should be better requirements for builders and better to address the hazardous substances in them. That's definitely a task for the authorities, but it needs to be well backstopped by research. And then I come to 3 points which I think are your tasks as researchers. There is a lack of explicitness of hazardous substance issues in building standards or procurement criteria and other. When it comes to hazardous substance management, we need to be explicit. We need exactly to name what we talk about, and not only generically to say, oh, we need less pollutants and no microplastics. That's what you usually find in the criteria. But with regard to the substances and the guidance docs behind, there is a lot of tasks to be done to add up there. We need more knowledge on hazardous substances in construction materials among all actors. So we need research and we need proof of evidence on hazardous substances in materials. And that calls for projects, and one-off surveys, sampling, screenings, material assessments. And there is, of course, also a lack of information on alternative materials and the costs versus the environmental impacts. And here, I think I would have some concrete wishes to UBA and other research groups. I think we need you more on that. And this is actually my key message. Cities, the urban environment, the urban user, any stakeholder, building, constructing, owning houses, living in houses, private, commercial, public, has a share in doing something, and citizens, entrepreneurs, authorities, and researchers have a big task here. So let's bring the tox-free issue equally beside the circularity and climate neutrality on construction materials and buildings and building processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Haldun, for making this encouraged point. It is taken, and we will, without further delay, come to the next speaker, but we will pick it up for sure in the discussion just in a minute. So thank you. And Jerome, with that, also as our time proceeds, I hand over to you and your presentation from the perspective of standardization on construction products and assessment. Again, we are looking at the toxicity, at what dangerousness means, but Jerome, you are to tell us more. Can you hear us and unmute yourself so that we can hear you as well?
And I did, thanks. Thank you for the invitation to speak here on behalf of CEN, in particular CEN TC 351, who's dealing with emissions of regulated dangerous substances. And I will come to that in a minute. First, I would like to respond to Mrs. Famler on a toxic-free environment, because I think it's a dangerous clause. Although I sympathize with it, there is no such thing as a toxic-free environment. You go out in the woods and there are quite some toxics around. If you're in a building, we're trying to decrease the amount of toxicity, but I'll get to that in a second. Next slide, please. First of all, I would like to take you to this beautiful painting by Peter Bruegel. This is the Tower of Babel. And it did not succeed because people started to talk different languages. Now, if you want to get to a common understanding of circularity, even toxic-free, but also on the emission of dangerous substances, then you have to speak the same language. And that is what standardization does. It sets one single language in the way researchers and regulators talk to each other. And it also brings together the experience of a lot of people from different backgrounds in order to set or define test methods, in this case for test methods for construction products. So standardization is aiming to have the same language. Now, what dangerous substances in construction products are is defined by the Construction Products Regulation, Basic Requirement 3 on hygiene, health, and environment. Now, I paraphrased the definition of what needs to be done there, but it reads, the construction works must be designed and built in such a way that they will, throughout their life cycle, not be a threat to the hygiene or health or safety of workers, occupants, and neighbors, nor have an exceedingly high impact on the environmental quality during their construction, use, and demolition regarding the emission of toxic gas, dangerous substances, radiation, and waste. Now, it contains two things that I would like to draw your attention to. First of all, the life cycle. Now, when this was designed, there was no such thing as circular construction. This is aiming at the life cycle of a product. During its lifetime, it's being used, and it's at the end of the life cycle, the construction is being demolished and the waste is being either reused in some way or landfilled. And the other one is environmental quality, because environmental quality you could define as a way to not have or exceedingly high impact on the environment. And that is, I think, a reasonable and scientific sound way of defining it. Next slide, please. Now, the scope of this TC, and the TC is a technical committee on, in this case, the emission of dangerous substances. The scope is, and I've also paraphrased this a little bit, a horizontal standardized assessment methods relating to the release of soil into indoor air of notified regulated dangerous substances under the CPR. Now, the CPR I just mentioned, the Construction Products Regulation is defining how construction products can be assessed in order to achieve a way to be used on the European market. And other words in this definition, or in scope, say horizontal. Now, what is meant with this is that we try to get one test method for all construction products. That means that not every construction product or type of construction product has to develop their own test methods. So if you can get a single method, it saves time and money, and the assessment by laboratories will be much more precise because they only have to use one method rather than various methods for various construction products. Now, it also states relating to the release to soil and indoor air. That means that you look at what's coming out of the product rather than what's in the product. Now, a lot of regulations throughout Europe are stating the amount of a dangerous substance in the product. So we also look at the content. But in particular, the industry at the time focused on the release with the notion that if something is in it and it's bound in the product, and it's not coming out, then you don't have to regulate that. Now, notified regulated dangerous substances means that there may be a lot of dangerous substances, such as substances mentioned by the REACH regulation. However, not all of those are being regulated by the member states. And if they're regulated, they're not always notified regulations. So there may be regulations that have requirements for products that are not notified and therefore not regulated in the sense that we look at it. An example is and Mr. Pirinen will know that the regulations in Finland regarding indoor air, which are not notified to the Commission. So, but this is typical for a single lifespan. So a single lifespan is a long time compared to other products. If you take your telephone, which is lasting about 2 years max, then a building is in existence for 50 years or more, and therefore you have to find ways in order to look at the lifespan, at least one lifespan, but now with circular construction, you also have to look at further lifespans beyond that. Now, what I would like to take for you to take from this presentation is that although construction sector is still organized horizontal, not circular, there are lots of initiatives in order to get grips on circularity. And there is one specific subcommittee of Technical Committee 350, which is dealing with the environmental burden of construction. And this subcommittee is looking at the circular ways of defining what needs to be done in order to have more life cycles after each other. But still, the regulations in many member states are organized linear rather than circular. And therefore, the test methods that we are developing are also reflecting this. One other thing is that TC 351 proves that environmental construction experts can work together. That was not as obvious when we started, because the industry felt that the environmental experts were going in a way that they would not be able to cope with. And otherwise, the environmental experts felt that the industry was not not really interested in going into an environmental sound way of working. And as the last point is that the horizontal approach is unique. It saves time and money, and it has proven its value. And in this TC 351, of which I'm the chair, that we have proven that it can work. Another thing is that this slide has no logo, because this is my personal view rather than the view of NEN, the Dutch Standardization Institute. So if you have any further information you would like to get, then on the last slide, you can find that information that can be made available to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerome, for sharing that information. I think standardization is one of the very important tools, because industry, in connection then with a kind of affirmative institutionalized way of putting our common rules to play, are set here, and thus it's very important what you do with your partners and the role you're playing in. I'd like now to ask Bernd Bierwert and Dirk Messner what, having reflected on your 3 presentations, what their insights are for the German Environment Agency, and for the perspective of sustainable transformation, but also for the European view on its contribution to the NEB and the research perspectives. So whoever of you wants to go first, gentlemen, the place is to you. Maybe Dirk, do you want to have the start? Please take the floor.
Okay, Bernd? Or?
Of course, sure. Of course.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Good. 3 quick reactions on the 3 presentations. First of all, thank you for the presentations, of course. Listening to the Lati story, Johanni, what came to my mind is that this is a very interesting success story. This is very ambitious what you are trying to implement, being climate neutral in 2050, with the challenges which you are not avoiding in your presentation. You are talking about the main challenges. What came to my mind is that we need success stories and demonstrations of success to motivate people to accept or even drive deep change, which we are looking at and which we try to move forward. And these kind of experiences, which Johanni presented to us, the Lati story, a success story, demonstrating how it can work, this is so important to motivate people, because very often the major feeling is that, as we are talking about all these complexities, the major feeling is that we cannot move forward. Where do we start? Where do we end? So this is my first point regarding the Lati story. Heidrun, then your toxic-free or pollutant-free perspective, I must say I share that. I do not have any problem with this. For me, the climate story, the biodiversity issue, the circularity thing, and then the pollution-free, or maybe in Jöran's words, the as pollution-free as possible environment. These 4 elements belong together. And you put the finger on the right point, actually, Heidrun, when you say that we have more attention for the first 3 ones than for the 4th one. I agree on that. No? And therefore, I can actually share the 6 challenges which you describe, which are something like a agenda, a research and implementation agenda in the field we are talking about. So thank you very much for your suggestions. And regarding our own experiences in the field, at UBA we have a large team working on chemical industry stuff and chemical pollution issues. One example only, which is related also, Bernd, to the European dimension then, we have been heading the human biomonitoring for the European Union program, where we measure the impact of chemicals on human bodies and therefore on human health. So the relationship, because Heidrun, you said rightly so, we need more data on the impacts of toxic substances. No? Regarding human health, we are making progress in this field, and we have been organizing this human biomonitoring for the European Union project as an example. So thank you very much for your inputs, Heidrun. And to Jöran, what I found very important in your discourse is that circularity is still not a major part, actually, of the green city or sustainability city approach. Even less so when it comes to implementation processes. I mean, one example only. In the German case, the circularity, the recycle quota when it comes to building materials is 2%. I mean 2, not 20 or something, 2%. No? So this point is very important. And I found very stimulating your horizontal standardization approach. I will look at it. It's because what you are trying to develop forward is lean governance and lean regulation. And I'm interested in these kind of approaches. This relates to 2 points where I have questions to you. The first one is, do you link this kind of reflection with the debate about digital passports and digital twins? I mean, because the data you are asking for and the standards you are developing, they could be brought together in digital passports, and they could be translated into digital twins. So is your discourse related to this kind of discussion? And the second element, I had yesterday a debate in our Ministry for the Economy on circular economy and how we move forward. One important issue, of course, the eco-design regulation debate at the European level. So is your debate directly linked to the eco-design discussion, or is this something different? So thank you very much to all of you on the panel, and back to Stefan.
Thanks a lot. We are running a bit short in time. This is just for all who are preparing short answers to the questions that you heard. So you must be very quick in your responses. I will call you, each of you, 3 speakers once more after then also having heard from Bernd. Now giving to you, Bernd, for your key lessons.
Thanks, Stefan. I tried to be brief. First of all, also many thanks from my side to the 3, Johanni, Heidrun, and Jeroen. Very interesting contributions, looking at different aspects. Maybe to start briefly with Johanni, and I was also thrilled to hear about the objectives, experiences, and ambition from Lahti. Maybe from the European perspective to say. We have launched in the current Commission a mandate, so-called Green Deal related missions, EU missions, which focus on research, innovation aspects, but which go beyond. And some of you probably have heard that one of the missions is the cities mission. Which has the objective to have at least 100 climate neutral cities by 2030. I'm just coming back from Copenhagen, which was one of the hundreds, and which are building up a network with other cities to exchange best practices. I think looking at the many months of lack of sun, Johanni, you could link with Brussels. My feelings in Brussels, there's not a lot of sun either, even if it's for different reasons. I was very happy to hear, that you are putting the focus on key issues, which are key issues for us also for R&I related to Green Deal, which is solar. The Commission just on the 18th of May came up with a communication. It's called Repower EU, which has to be seen also in the context of the Russian aggression, that we need to get more independent from fossil fuels, and the Green Deal is of course the answer to boost even more renewables. So there is also a solar initiative which looks also at the aspects which you mentioned, Johanni, of the cost. Understandably, the companies are looking in the first place on costs. Of course, there are different incentives, regulatory frameworks, but I think research and innovation can help a lot also to lower the prices. If you look at the example of offshore wind, for instance, which is quite impressive with the cost development. Hydrogen, Johanni, you mentioned that's also a big, if I may say so, sexy topic in the EU. We have a joint undertaking as part of the research instrument. We are looking a lot at battery technologies. Of course, the issue of storage in cases like yours in particular, it's very, very important. There's a battery alliance. Of course, this all has to be seen also with the issues of strategic autonomy, as we don't want to be over dependent also on the material side. Otherwise, we will end up in a similar situation like on oil and gas currently. On hydrogen, and that's also linked to Jeroen. Many thanks also from my side to highlight the issue of hazardous substances and tox-free cities. Indeed, we are talking about climate neutrality, but we are not focusing also at European level at CO2 emission reduction. The Director General for Environment is here in charge of, we call it a so-called zero pollution policy. As you know, zero pollution is a key pillar of the Green Deal. As it was also presented in late 2029, there's an action plan which is looking also at the cities angle, and where the research community is also asked to further develop ideas. And I couldn't agree more when you say cities can do more than nations. A very nice slogan, and therefore also for us the collaboration with cities and networks such as the Covenant of Mayor is extremely important. So is, of course, and that's what Jeroen was saying. Of course, the regulatory, the work of the CEN committee, which plays a very important role. And I think it was good that you were shedding the light what you can do, what you do, and what you don't do. What you are looking at that was quite interesting for me to see. I would have had the same question on the eco design. How do you link your work to eco design? As you know, we try to achieve with the eco design legislation a number of the issues you have been mentioned. We might come back, Stefan. I'm finishing here because I saw that it was also in the chat function. There are questions. I mean, of use of other instruments than standardization. So public procurement at a voluntary or on a regulatory basis. That's something, of course, I'd be also interested to hear from our panelists how they see the role of public procurement rules. Back to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bernd, for sharing also your views and responding already to the speakers. With a look to the time and to the second panel that is coming up with equally important questions, I really ask you, three speakers of our first block, to focus of what your most important point is to make now. So I give you this one point, maybe half a minute, to reflect on what you think you really want to leave with us before we have to move on to the second panel. But you are more than invited to share your insights also in the chat with the panelists, and then also afterwards, so we can also, in the reflection on this event, report on what you take home from this discussion. So it is not lost, but we don't have the time to put it here into the chat. But what is your most important point? I want to hear about it. And again, maybe ladies first. Heidrun, I would like to ask you to go first, and then come to Johanni and to Jeroen.
Ladies first, okay, we take the conservative approach. I want to bring the and, A-N-D, into the matter. So climate neutral, circular, and tox-free or zero pollution goal in construction material, construction sites and buildings. Maybe we call it the zero pollution aim. And I would very much vote for making it more explicit and giving it the room of equality. This has to do with what Dirk Messner said about research. It has to do about funding programs. Everything is about climate and circularity. And we always have to justify why it's important to think about the substances.
Thanks a lot. Johanni. Johanni, we can see that you're
I hope I could share my links. Can you see it? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yes, this is our illustration of the Finnish typical houses, detached houses, and this is what we are now doing. We are really wanting to change our houses to run with a renewable energy, because 40% of our energy goes to the houses. So if we can solve this, we are free from the output energy and from the Russian energy and all that stuff. So I think this is the first challenge that we have to tackle. We have to make all the houses run by their own energy free houses. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Johanni, for pointing out our energy dependence and our transformation goals once more very clearly. This is at hand, definitely. Jerome, to you for the final words for this.
Yes, thank you. On eco-design, yes, it's important that for construction also eco-design is being used as a framework. However, you have to take into consideration that construction is normally lasting much longer than, for example, electronic equipment, even a dishwasher or something. And therefore, it has a different flow of things. But eco-design is being dealt with by TC 350, which I mentioned. And then on the digital passport, yes, of course, the environmental product declaration should be part of the digital passport. So in the future, you can make use of the information that's available for a construction product in order to be reused as is, rather than being wasted and then recycled.
Thanks a lot, Jerome. There is much more to talk about, and you took many more lessons with you, and we are eager to learn about them. So the invitation stands to collect these insights also from your side, also from you as audience taking part, and we will put them together in the documentation of this event. So we will be sharing with you opportunities on how to do that. So thanks a lot first for this round here. In the program, we did announce originally a video that we have shown already in the beginning, and we will repeat it to the end of the program, so you do not have to miss it. We will link it, but for time's sake, we are not showing it now. It's 8 minutes presentation of ICLEI Europe, Bauhaus Earth, World Economic Forum, and the ARL Academy for Territorial Development in Germany, emphasizing different stakeholder needs to sustainable new European Bauhaus related knowledge creation and research. So check this out, as we say, in the future. And we are getting now prepared to go into our second panel, but have a very short break of about 20 seconds. So stretch, relax, Christian, start the video, and we are back in about 20 seconds. So thanks a lot, Christian, for sharing the video. Christian is supporting in the background with us also arrangement of the panelists on stage here. And I'm very glad to welcome now next to our chairperson, Dirk and Bernd, three ladies who are Friederike von Rosenberg. She is Director of Castles, Gardens and Buildings from Klassik-Stiftung Weimar, the birthplace of the original Bauhaus. Friederike is an architect. She was and is relatively new with the Klassik-Stiftung since this year. And before that, she was working in Dresden a lot, the capital city of Saxony. And who knows Dresden a little bit will know the places that she has been engaged with, amongst others, the Militärhistorisches Museum and the Gemäldegalerie. So many will know that. And she worked together in that with Daniel Liebeskind and other famous architects. So she will focus on the question how we can build a sustainable future for our historical heritage and historical buildings. Friederike, it's a pleasure to have you here today. After Friederike, we will have Elizabeth Merck, mentioned already during our discussion. She is a professor and a doctor also in architecture, is director of urban planning in the city of Munich, and research lead of one of the 5 new European Bauhaus Lighthouse projects, neighborhoods. She will be telling us much more on Munich's sustainable development plans and how the quarter and the rural urban also in the connection at Neuperlach will play a role in this. We are very keen on learning more about that. And we have, and also that's a great pleasure, Gotland Albe with us, board member of the Gender CC Women for Climate Justice Initiative. Gotland is an independent researcher and advisor of sustainable energy and climate change policy with a special focus on gender issues. And she has put that focus into discussion on climate and urban development as well. So we are in particular also looking forward to your insights on this justice aspects and gender aspects in our discussion, as for the NEB, the together perspective and this part of that also plays a crucial role. So I'm very pleased to have you here. And first of all, and this is of course not Jerome, but Friederike von Rosenberg, whom we see here, Director of Castles and Gardens from the Klassikstiftung Weimar, to be our first presenter. Friederike, I'm very pleased you are joining us today, and I'm giving the word to you for your about 5-minute introduction.
Dear Stefan, thank you very much. Hello to all the colleagues. I try to give a quick rush through Weimar. The Classic Foundation, we are like the practical experience in our discussion. I think we have more than 70 buildings, 31 museums, and 150 hectares of parks and gardens. So we are, let me say, like the hands-on sustainable doers here. Maybe next slide, please. So we have very excellent rooms, buildings, of course, furniture, paintings, and we are like the part of, we are dedicated to keep the heritage. And we, as we heard from Dirk in the beginning, keeping and reusing is the most, like, we have a big impact on climate, and like sharing and keeping heritage is like going on with sustainability. Like for 500 years we are doing this. And of course we all know museums are energy wasters. So this is a big point, that we have like the contradictory of needs, and we have to balance this carefully. So these are just some pictures of our buildings and sites. So next slide, please. And keeping heritage is, of course, not only a question of climatic sustainability, but also cultural sustainability. We have the impact of climatic changes in our parks by dying trees, which means that the Gesamtkunstwerk of the park is just done, and we cannot we just cannot rebuild big trees and the big structures in the parks. We have to face this. And of course, you all know we had a big fire in our famous library, was losing thousands of books. So we have a hands-on problem with losing heritage, and we have to face like sustainability in this way too. Next one, please. And this was our project. Congratulations to Munich. We did not make the Lighthouse demonstrator project, but we are still in the discussion, because it's like inside felt points that we want to have a lively place for heritage, not only the building structure, also like the delicate structure we have inside the rooms, our furnitures, our paintings, and also our offices. Like you can see me now still in the castle of Weimar, here remaining, and we try to, yes, like practical, see what can we do. So we have like, we all know the problems with these climatic guidelines in museums like ASHRAE or ICOM. And we said in a really early stage that we want to follow the natural climate in this building to lower energy cost, but also lower the impact of the building structure, because we all know what big influence what we have. If you see the building on like the room structure, and you imagine HVAC systems inside, you feel like you can see the problem. So this is what we are in the moment are building. and refurbishing. And yes, we have the problem too. It was mentioned before, the problem of keeping things started, get them in a good way started. We have here, like you also know that, like we have to use the first stages to make the deep impact to our buildings and to the life cycle. And we don't only have like 80 years life cycle, we have 500 years of life cycle. So it's even more important to focus on phase 0, as we call it. And I added phase 10 for the life cycle. And we all have to be aware that we have to make good decisions in the beginning. And this could be that we spend more money in the beginning, but then we have less effort while keeping it. So this was a quick rush, and I would like to finish now with a view in our park, which is still there and lovely. And I invite you all to come to Weimar, because we are like the heart of classicism and architecture, and what is a lovely city. And yes, thank you for your listening.
Thank you very much, Friederike, for sharing these impressions from Weimar, bringing us very concretely to the tasks that we want to change and where we want to have the impact with the new European Bauhaus, which is not at all about only building new things, but of rebuilding, of sustaining our built environment in a more sustainable way. So thanks for highlighting this in this very specific area of Weimar. And it gives us now the opportunity to ask Elisabeth Merck to the floor, who will a bit widen the context to the quarter, to the district, and then urban perspective, and give us insights on how the Bavarian capital is dealing with these questions nowadays. Elisabeth, it's a great pleasure, Professor Merck, to have you here with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I hope you can hear me. And
very well. Yes.
You can go to my second slide. And thanks also to Friederike, because I'm convinced that dealing with the existing city, we can really learn a lot from heritage and heritage issues. So I think this is a good combination. Actually, we are developing a new integrated master plan in a strategic and spatial way. And the target is 2040, only 20 years, because we think our decisions maybe must be revisited in every circle and let something open. So next slide. The new point is that we think a strategic master plan with sustainable development goals and urban policy must focus and combine circular sustainable development with a circular economy and on a regional planning scale. And this is really new, from the single building to the regional planning, because only in this way it has really a chance in time. And next slide. Our master plan starts by the people and their daily environment. It's not only about Lighthouse and pilot projects, it's really about the daily life of people. And it has 3 layers in space and time: a short-term layer related to neighborhood issues, a midterm strategy related to the area of the city, and a long-term scale according to the region. Next slide. And as Dirk Messmer said before, I love cities, and that's why I convinced that city is not only the problem, the heart of the problem, but cities can be part of the solution, and really a big part of the solution. So our biggest challenge is to transform the existing cities into a carbon neutral city. And in the case of Munich, and I think a lot of other cities in Europe, housing must kept affordable also during this transformation, and this is not so easy. So our focus is neighborhoods rather than individual buildings. We have a holistic approach, and we have an approach really paying attention to the social issues and the interaction of spaces and of course public spaces. Now, next slide, the district of Neuperlach from the 60s and 70s. It's not already heritage listed, but in our point of view, it's heritage, and it's also a lot of energy. We inherited it in that way. There are living a lot of people there, and we will make it fit for the future. In these big dimensions, we use digital twins, as was mentioned before. But next slide, what really is interesting to us and why we presented our project to the new European Bauhaus is how can we achieve a change of perspective towards cultural diversity, towards a systemic change, also in governance structures, and how can we reflect with new partners about how to change this huge area. So next slide, the neighborhood approach, of course, but also the idea that art and aesthetics can help to focus on this transformation in another way that beyond technical solutions, because I think one crucial point is that up to now we are very focused on technical solutions, and of course we need technical solutions, but they only so good as we are able to implement it also in our mindset. And my question to the audience in a way is, we are, next slide, very experienced in participation in different tools, how to go into an interaction with our citizens. And we talk about cooperation and now also co-creation. But on the other hand, we want to be very quick. And being quick normally is a little bit contradictory related to participation. You need a lot of time to do this in a good way. So how to deal with culture and creativity in a way that they can support this sustainable development and this transformation process. This is one of our main questions, using maybe different tools and ways than we did before. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this insights. Also in using the time very much to the point. Thank you for limiting yourself there. We'd love to hear more about that, more from each of you, and hopefully in the discussion we can pick up some points then again from Bernd and Dirk first, and then also from the audience. But first of you, heading to our third speaker, to Gotland Albe, on the justice and women and climate justice perspective and that view on an urban development. Gotland, maybe ask you to the floor.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all the other speakers for their interesting inputs. So my topic is justice, but I want to focus on gender justice at least as a starting point. So a modern way of dealing with gender is always to looking also at intersectionalities or at other disparities. So Bauhaus, let's say the old Bauhaus, was not really a forerunner in terms of gender. So maybe some of you have seen the movies around this. So the women, they were allowed to join, to attend the school, but they were not allowed to do architecture. They were pushed into the weaving classes, for instance, what they thought is appropriate for them. And also the outcomes of Bauhaus architecture, or the architecture of some Bauhaus people, could also be criticized in terms of social and gender aspects. I won't go into detail there. But I want to say that the new Bauhaus must consider and fully integrate gender aspects. You may ask, why do I need to say anything about that? Maybe I do, because often gender is considered as an issue of the global south, of Africa or Asia or so, and not necessarily of Europe. But what we have in Europe is are still gender disparities in terms of income. We have an unequal distribution of care work, and that leads to different, for instance, mobility patterns, also different needs in terms of houses and different patterns of using houses. We have still gender roles are very effective. So when you go into a toys shop, you will see that they are even strengthened through industry. So it's full of pink and blue and so on. And that influences, for example, occupational choice and thereby who profits from job creation in specific areas like construction or renewable energy technologies. Referring to an earlier speaker about hazardous substances, so in terms of gender, we have, for instance, a different exposure to hazardous substances, to indoor pollution, because women, if they do care work, are more at home, but we have also different bodies, and gender medicine is still underexplored, I would say, in particular as the effects of chemicals on female and male bodies. And we also, what I find interesting, we have different awareness of chemicals and toxic substances. So women usually are more aware and are more concerned, for instance, about insulation materials. And if we look at cities, we see that gender roles are still have influence and are still influencing the layout of cities. So for instance, the distinction between public and private spaces and so forth. On the other hand, we have a lot of knowledge on these issues available. So there has been a movement on gender and architecture already. Oh, now I have to more than 30 years ago. That was starting. There's a large body of findings on gender and urban planning and urban development. For instance, about 20 years ago, there was a large ex post program on gender mainstreaming in urban planning. We have a lot of knowledge about gender and mobility, so gendered mobility patterns, gendered use of public transport or private transport. And we have, for instance, the new urban agenda from UN Habitat. So I don't know if you know it, but this was meant as a roadmap to a sustainable city, and it calls in many places, it calls for gender responsive urban planning, including transport planning, energy planning. But I think in Europe it's not, so people don't know about it, and it's not really used. So it's as other gendered aspects is, I think, mainly considered as an issue of the global south and not of the global north. So what we see is that we have this knowledge, but we have an implementation gap. So for instance, this ex-post program, this research program I was talking about, later on, this was completely forgotten, and all the so we did an analysis of all the funding programs in Germany about urban planning, and all of them that do not at all refer to gender, even though the legal basis of these programs points to gender mainstreaming. That should be part of urban planning. And also despite maybe experiences in Munich or well, the forerunners in Vienna, we have a participation gap. In particular, regarding women due to, for instance, so double burden and scarcity of time, and also that most women usually underestimate their knowledge and don't feel as competent to taking part. So what we did about that is just as an example, we carried out a program in a number of countries with pilot cities, and we worked with women's organizations in order to train these organizations on gender and climate change and the linkage between gender and climate change. And we offered a systematic approach how to assess the city's climate policy in terms of gender in order to develop policy recommendations. So this has been concluded, this program. It took place in countries in the global south, in India, South Africa, and so forth. But we want to bring this experience now to Germany and work with German cities on a similar approach. So my conclusion is what we need in terms of research is beyond, technologies and all these things, is particularly social and gender innovation in order to enable a structural transformation. And we were part of a study that was done for the Umweltbundesamt, for the UBA, 2 or 3 years ago, and there we looked at various sectors of needs like mobility, clothing, and so on, but also at urban policies and urban planning, and try to set up some kind of a research agenda. And I don't want to go into the details of this research agenda, but this document is available, unfortunately, only in German. But it lists a lot of research gaps. So just as an example, care work. So how can care work, which is now unequally distributed between women and men, how can it be redistributed, and what would be the consequence for more sustainable cities and urban structures? And also what negotiation processes are going on in private households. So what is the dynamics in terms of care work, also in terms of housing and mobility? Also, how does gender influence, for instance, the living place? Because one problem we have in urban areas, if we talk about reducing greenhouse gases, is the increasing space people believe they would need, and so how does gender influence that? Or other more concrete questions, so can we develop like gender responsive design guidelines for active transport, for walking and for cycling? Because I have the feeling every city is somehow searching and exploring, and could we develop like guidelines that based on gender analysis that would help every city to design public spaces that are accessible, that are safe, and so forth.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much for taking us into this journey, into this perspective, which I think is very well placed also here to make us aware of the importance. And I'm also curious to see how Friederike and Elizabeth might react to how they have taken this perspective on board, which role it plays, but also, and we know that in European research funding programs, it is now increasingly and demand to take care of that perspective, to consider it. But here we are talking very precisely on what does it mean in the region, in the district predominantly. So it's a great pleasure to have you here. And I like to hand over not to my personal insights, but much more to what Dirk and Bernd have observed again from the 3 presentations, and then hope that we can, not I hope, I'm looking forward for the tour again that we can do back to the 3 of you to see what you have heard as well from your co-speakers and what you would like to feedback to Dirk and Bernd as well. So again, over to you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I could start, and I will try to be brief to have the chance for interaction very quickly. Therefore, Friederike, I think the main point is what you are making, what you are emphasizing is that you are talking about 2 sides of the same coin. On the one hand side, there is the issue and the challenge of maintaining cultural heritages and buildings with a sustainability perspective, which is very challenging from technical starting with technical aspects and finishing with the beauty and art elements. So this is the one element, and this is part of our retrofitting of buildings and urban areas in Europe, because we have a long heritage, we have a long history. And maintaining this from a sustainability perspective is something which needs much more focus. And the other side of the coin, which you are mentioning, is that this is about beauty, identity, and well-being. So working on these 2 fronts at the same time, this is what I got from your presentation, and I thank you for that, because I think we need more emphasis in this field. I can tell you, I think we didn't talk about this, Friederike. Claudia Roth is now very interested in these kind of questions, and I think we can make progress in this field, therefore. Mm-hmm. The second presentation from Elisabeth, and thank you very much for driving us into your project, is that you highlighted the neighborhood, the social dimension, the cultural perspective, and what I have been taking from this, Elisabeth, is that the whole transformation which we're having in mind is more than technical solutions. You said this literally, no? It's also more than better research and better knowledge, because often we are so naive to argue from a scientific perspective that if we do better research, we get better results, and afterwards someone can implement this, And probably the magic of implementation of sustainability processes, which you are describing, is how we interact between the research guys on the one hand side and the people coming from these different areas, the architects, the planners, the financing institutions, and the tacit knowledge which we can interchange in these networks and transformation alliances. I think that this is what makes the difference at the end of the day. And I understood that you are going into this direction, and I found this very interesting. Then Gotelind, I share completely your agenda, which you have been highlighting, and I thank you for mentioning that you have been working with Uber and for Uber also with your studies and your insights. This is very important. You have a common denominator with Elisabeth, and this is the social dimension and the equality and inclusion and participation dimension of the transformation process. And I agree on that. And what I would like to highlight, you also mentioned this, you talked about a next generation of female architects or urban planners. This has been a universe which has been very male dominated for a very long period of time. And therefore it is a cultural challenge and a shift in perspective needed to get much more gender equality into these, for a very long period of time, the first Bauhaus epoch included, by male. So thank you very much for your contribution.
Thanks a lot, Dirk, for your reflections. Very insightful as always, and giving to Bernd to complement them as well.
Vielen Dank, Stefan, and many thanks also to the 3 speakers in the second panel. I think who have, looking also at the first panel, contributed really excellently on complementary and equally important aspects of the Bauhaus initiative, starting with Friederike. Yeah, I like what you say, that you are basically doing work on sustainability, reaching back many centuries back, and securing it also for our heritage for the future. Of course, with the I mean, you showed us some photos. It's a challenging task. I want to say from the European perspective, we are trying to support, to stimulate, to contribute also to the discussion, both from a financial perspective, of course, with structural regional funds, but also from the research perspective. We have in Horizon Europe so-called Cluster 2 with a destination which is focusing on innovative research on the European cultural heritage and also on the cultural and creative industries. We have started now to link these topics also to our Bauhaus initiative. So one of the projects we are looking at is about innovative solutions for greener and fairer ways of life through arts and culture, architecture and design for all. We did already something in the work program 21-2022. I mean, the fact that Ursula von der Leyen has been speaking today in the Vatican City, which is also cultural heritage on Bauhaus, also highlights the links of the initiative to the past, to the present, and to the future. On Elizabeth, let me take this opportunity again to congratulate you of being one of the winners of the Lighthouse Demonstrators. Emily, who's with me, and another colleague from my team were at the origin of drafting the topic many months ago, and we were. It was also a new challenging task for us. We were not sure what kind of project applications we would get, and we were really overwhelmed to see a huge number of projects, and yours was really excellent, and rightly so, was chosen among the 5. Very important to make the link to circularity at a regional scale, and to combine technical solutions with social issues. This is also something what we are trying to achieve with our cities mission. So climate neutral, to have at least 100 climate neutral cities by 2030, with the idea to design with the help of a cities platform, so-called city climate investment plans. And Elizabeth, what you are doing, what you showed us, so that's exactly what we want to showcase to many other cities who maybe are lagging behind and could learn from best practices like yours. On Goodland, just briefly, I think also a very important aspect, and you confirmed it. We try in general in our research program in Horizon Europe to have the gender aspects mainstreamed, so that we don't single it out in 1 or 2 projects, but that really the dimension is reflected throughout our programs. And of course, for Bauhaus, this plays an important role. We tried also, when we selected a roundtable of high-standing experts, to have a good mix. Indeed, like what you said on architects, that it's important there to include the new generation of female architects. I can assure that my commissioner Maria Gabriel, she's very keen on this aspect. She reiterates it in many meetings we are having to include it, and that is also why we try to tackle it in our work program. So I think very important aspects which have been here brought up in the second panel, and very complementary to the first round. Stefan, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernd. And as announced, once more, I would like to go back to the three of you. And again, as also for the first one, I would like to ask you for your most important take-home point, or maybe question back to to Dirk and to Bernd. Friederike, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thank you. So many points, but maybe just let me just say we have, as reusing our buildings, it is maybe from the beginning of Bauhaus, we should not say form follows function, but we say like function follows form. So it's like that you more use what you have and adapt your use. So it's not such a big challenge on the buildings and reusing the material which are only already there, and lower technical support. Yeah, preventive conservation must be reliable to our nature. If we see what we put in the name of preventive conservation to have our machines on, we have to react on this issue, and we have to balance the needs for all topics. So maybe that's my point. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for joining us today. And Elizabeth, to you.
Yes, thank you. I see an interconnection in between the first panel and our panel when I think of the material approach of Heidrun. I think heritage and also what we try to do to work with the existing has three arguments in common. There are values we give to the buildings, to the spaces, to the cities. There are materials we have to deal with, and I think we can learn a lot from heritage and also from the material sciences, because it's not only how we build new without toxic materials, it's also what are we doing with all this inherited stuff from the 70s. It's not so easy. And third, it's about emotions, because I think architecture, design and beauty, and the European Bauhaus also refers to beauty, matters because it can touch our heart, not only our rational brain. And this brings me to a big inspiration in Munich. Actually, we celebrate 50 years of our Olympic park landscape. Because in '72 there was the Olympic Games. And when you look into the history, you can learn that in a way they had really this power to change society. They had this power to change really the way to create future. And they had this approach of Gestaltung, to give the transformation a beautiful form. And this is very important to me, because I think it's a link to the people, to I don't know this in English, to involve people in this process. So beauty and good design can be a big help to do this. And then about decisions, I mean, in a way, time is relative, and so are our ideas and theories, and we must keep it also a little bit open for the next generation. I mean, I'm now dealing with people in my reunions, which is not the next generation, it's the not the last generation, but I know what I mean. So my last point is really to get young people into this process of New European Bauhaus. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this inspiring perspectives as well, and for also calling for the young generation to follow. And good Linde, please, very brief, what you like as well to add to this round to conclude.
Okay, just a quick remark addressing Bernd. I think we need both in terms of research projects. So we need specific gender projects in order to develop like approaches and methodologies. And we need to mainstream gender into research projects. I think we need both. And finally, I want to say, so I usually talk about we're working towards low carbon, resilient, gender just, inclusive cities. And now I learned I want to integrate also beautiful cities. And thanks a lot for this, and thanks a lot for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this mutual experience here. Time is relative, you said, Elizabeth. We face it. It's sometimes also very sticky. Looking to the time map, I think all the three of you would have loved to have more time to engage with you. We will be picking up questions that came through the Slido and we post them through you directly. Maybe if some of them are for you to answer, that would be much welcome. For all of you still being with us, I would like to invite you to stay maybe maximum 5 more minutes with us and to go into the wrap up and next steps. And for this, Dirk and Bernd can prepare each for 1 minute to summarize what they from this entire site event take home. So each of you will have 1 minute, but before you are put to the panel again, I'm inviting Miriam Dross. She is head of section for the urban rural mobility, and she is project leader for the UNTNEB project, advancing the new European Bauhaus, to share with us what the German Environment Agency is doing in this project, and maybe inviting you to one of the forthcoming events. Miriam.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan, for the opportunity to present the UNTNEB project. UNTNEB stands for Advancing the New European Bauhaus, Sustainable Mobility and Resilient Urban Spaces for Better Quality of Life. And it's an in-house research project of the German Environment Agency that started on March 1st. And UNTNEB aims to provide a contribution to the European Commission's NEB approach by conducting research on resilient, sustainable, fair and health promoting urban areas. So this connects to what Elizabeth Mark has said very well. And UNTNEB wants to look at the urban space as a whole and will focus on the quality of life in the urban environment. We want to research on how urban sustainable development can be combined with the qualification of green spaces and the transformation of mobility. So to think these 3 aspects together. And we have a long list of research topics that are included in this 3.5-year project. And one focus is to, it's also focusing on construction and buildings as a source of pollution, on living labs for sustainable mobility, to foster participation, on data related to health and living environment in Germany, and on multifunctional built and landscape structures and their potential contribution to climate change adaptation. You can see we have a long list of issues that we are researching on, and we want to bring them together to look at neighborhoods and how we can create a better quality of life there. And to learn more on UNTNEB, we are inviting you to take part in the International Kickoff Conference of the project on September 15th, 2022. It features a high-level opening discussion panel on the new European Bauhaus initiative with Ruth Reichstein of the European Commission. Dirk Messner will join us there as well, and Michaela Magas from the high-level roundtable New European Bauhaus. And there will be a couple of interactive workshops that will address questions such as whether serial solutions can help in urban retrofits, and on enhancing urban climate resilience through blue-green infrastructures, again, living labs in urban mobility, and on multifunctional urban spaces, which will feature the approach that I mentioned before. And And we are very excited to have you there, and this will allow interactive discussions. And a highlight will also be a keynote on environmental politics in the Anthropocene city by Dr. Harriet Barkley of Durham University. So please feel invited to join us in September and to learn more on the AdNEB project. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We took the liberty to take this advertisement in this session, but also giving time to Dirk and Bernd to prepare for their short last communication. So now you are on spot again. Dirk, first to you. Your minute is counting.
Yeah, following our routine, Bernd, I will start and you follow up on that. Okay. Good. No summary, of course, because in 1 minute a summary is impossible. 2 quick thoughts. The first one is that I would like to emphasize again, Bernd, what you mentioned several times at the beginning, sense of belongingness. I like that. This has to do with trust issues, social cohesion issues, and there's research on that. The way people feel secure, feel whether there is belongingness to them, trust. This is defined by the 1-2 square kilometers around us. This is Elizabeth. This is what you are looking at in your project. And this, at the end of the day, is a question of democracy, because if people are not coming together in these spaces, and if we don't organize our cities in this regard, democracy will fail. So this is my one thought. My other thought is very briefly to be formulated. I think it is very important, and this is maybe something also to you, Bernd, and the European level. I think we need to have an international arm of these new European Bauhaus, because urbanization is a driver of global change. And if we don't get global urbanization into the right direction, we will fail with all the agendas which we have been debating today. The climate one, the circularity one, the biodiversity one, the toxic-free one, and the belonging to one. And therefore, rethinking the project or developing the project and initiative further, having in mind the interaction between the European greening Bauhaus and what is happening in this field internationally is something which I would very much support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Bernd.
Many thanks. I would like to make 4 short points. So, Dirk, you see, the Commission always wants to bring in more points, twice as much as yours. Not necessary on substance. But before I come to the 4 points, a big thank to, in particular, to Stefan for this really great initiative. I'm very happy that you invited me, and it was a very rich discussion. And I think it has shown number one, the objective of the Bauhaus is really to make the Green Deal a tangible, positive experience in achieving climate neutrality. And I think the discussion has shown the potential, but also the challenges. Secondly, the Bauhaus has the 3 values: sustainability, inclusion, aesthetics. And I think the discussion has very well shown the different avenues and the necessity to link them. And thirdly, particularly if you look at construction, the role of cities, urban development, which is extremely important to look at our past and how to deal with the future, cultural heritage and gender issues. The last point I wanted to make, and Dirk, you mentioned already, and I saw it also in some of the questions in Slido, the need for transdisciplinary approach, not to focus only on technical or social solution, to bring really many disciplines together. And I fully agree with you, Dirk, not only in Germany, in Europe, we have to go beyond, as for instance, also, I mean, the Global Covenant of Mayors is looking at the international dimension, and that's also what we are trying to roll out in the next steps. Back to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to both of you. I'm sharing my screen once more to tell all of you for the if there are additional things you want to leave with us, you can use Slido, and we will put one more poll free there, which will be just telling this to Emily, not the direct one, but the final one, so that you can leave an anonymously. Any comments that you have for us, you can also rate the experience of that. We will not go through that now, but just to say there is your opportunity to give us the feedback, and we will read it carefully. And in addition, I would also stress that I'd like to thank all the speakers who have joined. I'd like to thank Dirk and Bernd for their tremendous job in putting the reflections together. And I'd like to thank Christian, Christiane Heiss, Emily, Gunnar Stoll, and many others in the background of this conference to making all of that happen. It was a big pleasure on my side. And thank you for spending your time this afternoon. I wish you all a good evening from wherever you're joining, and hope to see you soon in the one or the other Bauhaus event, or maybe in September for our UNTNEB conference to kick off there. See you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye. So we are closing the meeting, and the video that was promised, it will be also posted to the website. So we will not take